Today I'm going to talk to you about something that is one of the biggest scandals in the financial world, and it's one that many people have heard of, but they don't really understand it, and they don't understand why it's so bad. And that thing is gold leasing. Now, everyone is familiar when you lease a car. What happens? Basically, you go and you choose the car that you want, and the company makes you sign a contract. Now that contract means that effectively the car is yours, but there's certain things that you're not allowed to do with it. You're not allowed to extensively modify it. You're not allowed to scrap it. You're not allowed to sell it unless you apply to sell it, in which case if you're more than a certain way through the lease, the company will probably agree, and the conditions on that are that you pay a final termination fee on that lease. And Ford Motor Company especially sells a lot of cars this way, and people are quite familiar with this concept. Now, gold leasing is different. Let's take a look at what happens with gold leasing. With gold leasing, you decide how much gold you want. You have to be a bullion bank in order to lease the gold. People like JP Morgan, for example. Then you decide which central bank you want to approach, which one will give you the most favourable terms and the type of terms you want, because gold lease terms vary a lot. And some of them, in fact most of them, are limited in form of time, in that you, in theory, you might lease the gold for 10, 20 years, whatever, and this takes your cost down because you're on monthly repayments. So you might be paying say 1/100th of the amount that it would take to buy $1 million bar of gold, rather than paying the whole lot off up front. Whereas other forms of gold leasing require a large upfront investment, if not the total amount. And the unique thing about gold leasing contracts is that they do not require you to actually have the gold. So the gold is delivered to you, but what you do with it after it's delivered is entirely up to you. So here's what happens. You order 5 bars of gold, 20-ounce bars, from the central bank of your choice. You pay whatever upfront deposit is required, if any, and you then start paying so much a month. Now, when you get that gold, do you put it in a vault and pay storage fees? The public seems to think that this is what happens. However, it doesn't. What you do is you sell it into the jewellery industry, to China, you break it up into smaller bars for investors, you sell it to the mint for coinage, and you realise the total value of that gold as near as possible to the time that you pay the deposit on it. This way you make a massive amount of money, and you've got a monthly repayment which you're squirreling away and sending to the central bank that's a lot lower than the actual profit you've made. And you keep doing this again and again in order to keep the gravy train flowing. Meanwhile, the central bank, when they get audited, they can point to a lease agreement which says quite categorically that they still own the gold. They still have these bars of gold that they've actually sent away, they still own it. It's still on their books. For the duration of the lease agreement, it's quite legal for them to claim that they still have the gold, although they know that in fact that gold is gone. And this is how gold evaporates from storage vaults all over the world. It's one of the ways. The Bank of Canada actually had another novel way of getting rid of gold. They baked it into their windows. The National Bank of Canada's offices has hundreds of windows, and each window has a reported 50 ounces of gold baked into it. So if you're actually going to do some sort of gold heist, go to the Bank of Canada, smash one of their very thick windows and take the gold away. But it would be very difficult to recover from the glass. Now, this whole thing is a scandal because it means that the national banks can say, oh yes, we've got X tons of gold. When in actual fact they don't. They've leased that gold out. That gold is subject to lease agreements. And at the end of the term of the lease, they won't get the gold back. What they will know they get back is something like 120% of its value at the time of leasing. The same as a car. Because when you lease a car, the final payment, if you sell the car, or the payment you make when you return the car, takes the total money paid to around about 20 to 30% more than the actual market value of the car. And in the car world, that's called a hidden cost of finance, because many consumers aren't actually aware of the total amount that they've paid for a car. Whereas in the gold market, this is what the bullion banks rely on. They rely on the fact that they have a steady flow of gold from a central bank, and that all the time they're making massive wadges of profit from disposing of that gold. And this is one of the reasons why GLD has only got 1 ounce per 100 actually on the market. If not, some people reckon it's 1 ounce per 400 ounces of paper gold. Because the bullion banks can point to the fact that they've bought X million dollars worth of, or X billion dollars worth of gold. However, they have actually sold it. All bar the tiny amount that they keep in reserve, just in case anyone should demand physical gold. But modern GLD and paper gold type contracts very often include clauses that say, well, you've got to jump through all these loops to get through your gold, to get your gold back. And they're impossible things to do. Like, for example, in order to get your gold back, you have to have bought a certain tonnage of gold. And even a billionaire would balk at buying $2 billion worth of gold just in order to receive physical delivery. Governments might do it, but then governments are privy to the whole secret of gold leasing. Now, this is a real scandal because essentially, if you think about it, the central bank's gold doesn't belong to the central bank, it belongs to the people. And this is one of the hidden ways that governments have of pumping money out of the economy to fund whatever the political project of the day is. And in the old days, when gold used to be strictly audited, and it used to be what's known as allocated, which means that you had a list of the gold bars that you actually owned, they were numbered, they were assayed on a regular basis. This could not happen. But gold accounting standards, as soon as the gold standard was come off, gold accounting standards got very, very lax. to the point where it was just weight that was recorded and not the actual numbers of the bars, the sizes of the bars, the markings on them. And nowhere was this brought home more forcefully than when Germany asked for their gold to be repatriated, and the gold they got back had to be scrounged from all over the place. And the same happened when Chavez asked for the Venezuelan gold back, and what he got back was definitely not what he sent. The weight was right, but it was all different bars. And the culprit behind this is this whole gold leasing scam, where effectively the government's friends in bullion banks skim a cut off the top of the disposal of a country's gold reserve. And this is very serious. This is a very bad thing. And people ask, where is the gold? The answer is, it's around your neck, it's in your pockets, it's been distributed out into the world. It's gone. I hope you've enjoyed this and found it interesting and informative, and if you have, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much.